Hello, and welcome to our session 2 for the Anxiety Reduction Workshop from the UW-Oshkosh Counseling Center. My name is Kristen Marin, and I'm one of the counselors at the Counseling Center, and happy to walk you through this workshop, which is going to focus on thoughts. So this workshop is going to focus on our thoughts and how they affect our anxiety. Let's start by trying a mindfulness activity to help you become more aware of your thoughts without getting caught up in them. This exercise provides an excellent example of a way that you can practice not getting caught up in your thoughts. So if you can make sure you're sitting in a comfortable position, I invite you to either close your eyes or rest them gently on a fixed spot in front of you. Visualize yourself sitting beside a gently flowing stream with leaves floating along the surface of the water. For the next few minutes, take each thought that enters your mind and place it on a leaf, and let it float on by. Do this with each thought, pleasurable, painful, or neutral thoughts. Even if you have joyous or enthusiastic thoughts, place them on a leaf and let them float by. If your thoughts momentarily stop, continue to watch the stream. Sooner or later, your thoughts will start up again. Allow the stream to flow at its own pace. Don't try to speed it up and rush your thoughts along. You're not trying to rush the leaves along or get rid of your thoughts. You are allowing them to come and go at their own pace. If your mind says, "This is dumb," or "I'm bored," or "I'm not doing this right," place those thoughts on leaves too, and let them pass. If a leaf gets stuck, allow it to hang around until it's ready to float by. If the thought comes up again, watch it float by another time. If a difficult or painful feeling arises, simply acknowledge it. Say to yourself, "I notice myself having a feeling of boredom or impatience or frustration," and place those thoughts on leaves and allow them to float along. From time to time, your thoughts may hook you and distract you from being fully present in this exercise. This is normal. As soon as you realize that you've become sidetracked, gently bring your attention back to this exercise. And I invite you to take a couple deep breaths, breathing in and out, breathing in again and letting it go. Breathing in one last time, breathing out. And I invite you to stretch and bring yourself out of this exercise as we continue to learn more in today's workshop. So now we're going to work on identifying anxiety thoughts. You might have found in the Leaves on a Stream mindfulness exercise that we just did that you identified some anxiety thoughts coming up for yourself. And so we're going to work with those a little closer now. So I'm going to walk you through an activity where I will give some example situations where thoughts that lead to anxiety can come up. And I'd like you to imagine yourself in this situation and then write down an anxiety thought. Just one anxiety thought for now. Most of us can probably think of several anxious thoughts related to each situation, but just focus on one anxiety thought now. So if you are ready to begin the exercise, we'll move forward. The first example is a situation where you have to give a presentation. So take a moment to write down an anxiety thought that you might have in that situation. The second situation is your friends had a video chat and didn't invite you. So again, take a moment to write down an anxiety thought that you might experience in that situation. And finally, the last situation is you're starting a new job. So again, write down one anxiety thought that you might experience in that situation. So now let's go back and look at each of the anxiety thoughts you've written down. And for each of them, I'd like you to challenge yourself to think, what would be something you could tell yourself that would be more helpful and true? And you can put that down as a healthy thought for each of the situations. So again, for the first situation, having to give a presentation, take a moment to write a healthy thought. And for the second situation, not being invited to a video chat with friends, take a moment to write a healthy thought. And finally, for the last situation, starting a new job, please write down a healthy thought that you could tell yourself in this situation. And I invite you for a moment to compare how you felt after putting those anxiety thoughts down and how you felt after putting the healthy thoughts down. And encourage you to reflect on whether you can see how what you tell yourself makes a difference. Often with anxiety, what we tell ourselves is something we tell ourselves over and over again. And so I encourage you to think, what would happen if we shifted some of those anxious thoughts that we tell ourselves over and over into healthy thoughts? And again, for healthy thoughts, thinking what could be helpful and what could be true. So we're not saying to think of something that's not true, that's too idealistic or not accurate to the situation, but to really focus on a healthy thought. Let's watch a video that describes some of the common anxiety thoughts that are called cognitive distortions in cognitive behavioral therapy.
When I was in school, I hated giving presentations. They were just the worst type of assignment, in my opinion. I'd stumble over my words, forget what I wanted to say, and they just always felt like they went really poorly. But then I'd get pretty good grades. And I didn't ever understand how that was happening. How would I feel like I did so poorly, but then I'd get good grades? Well, eventually I learned this is caused by something called cognitive distortions. A cognitive distortion is a type of irrational thought where you see things as a bit more negative than they really are. Now, cognitive distortions are completely normal. Everyone has them. It's just part of being human. But when they're too frequent or too intense, they can contribute to problems like depression and anxiety. So today, I want to tell you about 5 different types of cognitive distortions. The first cognitive distortion is called emotional reasoning. This is when you feel something so intensely that you start to think it must be true. For example, think of someone who has a fear of flying. They know the facts that flying is safer than driving, but when they take that first step onto a plane, the fear takes over and they start to think, oh, I know this plane is going to crash. I know it's going to crash. Of course, the feeling doesn't have any bearing on the facts, but if you feel it strongly enough, it'll start to seem true. The next cognitive distortion is called disqualifying the positive. This is when you look at a situation with both good and bad aspects, but you sort of push that good stuff aside and you just focus on the bad stuff. So imagine you get a performance review at work. It says, great job, great job, great job, needs improvement, great job. You look at that and all you see is needs improvement. You forget about all the positive feedback. Another good example, imagine you go on a first date, everything is going well, you're getting along, you have a lot in common, and then you say something really stupid, you just put your foot in your mouth and you wish you could unsay it. Well, when you get home that night, that's all you can focus on, that stupid thing that you said, and you sort of forget that you're getting along great and having fun. That's disqualifying the positive, when you only focus on a small negative aspect of some situation. The next cognitive distortion is called mind reading. This is when you make assumptions about other people's thoughts or their intentions or behaviors without really having enough evidence. So imagine you give a friend a call, they don't answer, and you start thinking, oh, I bet they had picked up the phone, saw it was me, put it back down. Or I bet they're hanging out with someone else they like more, or maybe they just don't like me. And that's mind reading, when you make assumptions about why someone does something or what they're thinking or feeling without really knowing. The next cognitive distortion is called all or nothing thinking. This is when you see things in extremes, nothing in between. They're either black or they're white, they're good or they're bad. On a more personal level, this might mean I'm beautiful or I'm hideous. I'm brilliant or I'm a moron. I've got a great job or I've got a terrible job. So for example, think of someone who seems to have a pretty good life. They've got a good job, close friends, hobbies they like, they're healthy, but their romantic relationship is sort of on the rocks. Now, most people might look at this life and think like, oh, that's great, they've got a good thing going. But they look at their own life and they think, my life's a mess, I'm such a loser, all because of that one thing. That's all or nothing thinking. When you reduce something to its extremes, just seeing the black or the white without seeing that gray in the middle. The final cognitive distortion I want to talk about today is called catastrophizing. This is when you only consider the worst possible explanations for something rather than the more likely explanations. For example, imagine you're waiting for a family member to get home from work, they're 15 minutes late, and you start thinking, oh, they must have been in a car accident, why else would they be late? When in reality, they're just stuck at work for 15 minutes or stuck in traffic. And that's catastrophizing. You jump to the most drastic explanations without considering what's more likely. Now that I look back at my own experience giving presentations, I can see how cognitive distortions played a role. You know, my presentations, they weren't perfect. I'd stumble over my words and forget a few things, but it wasn't a big deal. In a 20-minute presentation, it might have been 2 or 3 minutes that were a little choppy. Now, the good thing about cognitive distortions is once you learn to spot them, you can start to challenge them. And by doing this, you can change how you think and you can change how you feel. And in the long run, this will improve your mental health.
Let's review the 5 common cognitive distortions discussed in the video. The speaker gave some of his own examples, but I encourage you to think of some of your own as I review them with you. First, emotional reasoning. This means that emotion changes our perception of facts. For example, the belief that flying in an airplane is more dangerous than riding in a car, even though the evidence is the opposite. Another example might be feeling that a brief presentation is going to result in unbearable pain, or that we'll pass out when giving the presentation, when the facts are that this is a very unlikely outcome for us. Second, disqualifying the positives. Here, we focus on the negatives and dismiss the positives. So, for example, this could be focusing on an idea given to improve a paper, yet dismissing all of the other feedback from the professor about the many things that were done well on your paper. Next, we have mind reading. This is assuming we know what others are thinking, feeling what others are feeling, or what others are doing, often with a negativity bias. So an example could be, we might assume if someone didn't come up and talk to us at a party, that it's because they didn't like what we were wearing or that they didn't want to talk to us, rather than acknowledging that it's nearly impossible for us to know why they didn't come talk to us without asking them. Next is all or none, also called black or white thinking. This is where our thoughts generalize to either extreme, all positive or all negative, missing the in-between gray areas and evidence. So an example could be when you've started a new romantic relationship. You might be in awe of your romantic partner and think that they don't have any apparent challenges, when in reality, we know that all people have challenges or things that they could improve upon. Finally, we have catastrophizing. This is thinking of the worst case scenario and focusing on that rather than other possible outcomes, including possible positive outcomes. So an example of this is thinking, if I fail my exam, then I'll never be able to graduate. Many times, we might use several of these cognitive distortions in the same situation or even the same sentence. That's why it helps to be aware of them and practice more helpful thoughts for each cognitive distortion that comes up for you. Sometimes our thoughts can feel overwhelming, particularly when it comes to making decisions that we encounter regularly throughout the day. We can get so caught up in our thoughts, and this happens to all of us. We might become busy paying attention and trying to work through all of our thoughts. We might be anxiously awaiting each new situation in the day, or we might seek to avoid the things that are causing us stress, including anxious thoughts. So one way that you can manage your thoughts and take care of yourself at the same time is having a daily routine. So when you wake up in the morning, you can, for example, have a set routine of what you do. You might want to eat, you might want to brush your teeth, you might want to exercise, and making sure you have this good balance and a routine for yourself throughout the day. And what we know is that a way to feel more in control of our lives and thoughtful about what will help us is to have balance regarding our priorities and to have balance in our routine. So, this routine is something that's personal to you. It can guide you through your day and make sure that your priorities are addressed that sometimes don't come to mind when you're feeling anxious. So, often when people are feeling anxious, they don't think of things like taking care of themselves. What can you do for self care? What can you do that you enjoy? Or they'll notice that it's hard to have quality sleep, quality nutrition when they're feeling anxious. And so having a foundation in terms of sleep, nutrition, movement, self-care can help you with recognizing the control you do have in your life, and the control that you can change your routine at any time if it makes sense. So you're not stuck with the routine you have. There's that flexibility there for you being able to have ultimate say over what your routine is. So now I invite you to listen to this podcast episode that is here in the link on the screen. This episode is from our counseling center and has two of our counselors talking and giving a discussion with tips on how to create a daily routine. And it's also on our counseling center's webpage of podcasts. So feel free to look at any of those that would be helpful for you. I hope that today's workshop has been helpful in giving you many opportunities for you to reduce your anxiety. Please be patient with yourself as you choose which ones you want to try and practice. Remember, any new skill takes time and practice to develop. Your old habits will come naturally to you, so try not to get discouraged when your practice doesn't go as you had planned. You'll get there as long as you keep on trying. So please take a moment now to pause the video and engage in some questions for reflection. Please answer, what are you taking from today's workshop? And secondly, what will you try before the next workshop? We also have some recommendations for next steps so that you can continue working on addressing your anxiety, particularly addressing thoughts and anxious thoughts that could come up. A free app that we would encourage you to check out is Breathe to Relax. You can download that free. We also have an article here about ways you can address and fix cognitive distortions. And then a video about getting stuck in the negatives, which can be very helpful to watch and learn more about that. Thank you so much for participating in today's workshop. We would greatly appreciate it if you could complete the short evaluation of the workshop. The evaluation link is in the video description below. We take the feedback that you give and use it to improve what we offer at the counseling center. So we would greatly appreciate your thoughts. And we hope that you are feeling positive that you took time today to take care of yourself by participating in this workshop. Be well, everyone. See you later.